News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. I first talked to this gentleman one-on-one when I was in a cab going, or wherever, Uber, going all the way over from, he'll laugh at this one, I think it's, White Plains, New York, because my flights were so screwed up and I had to get to a convention. And I called the great Stephen Moore, or Steve Moore for short, former Trump administration economist, and booked him that night on my show. And he's also with the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. He's a fantastic man and a former advisor to President Trump. Just a great guy. Steve, thanks for giving us some time tonight on the Chris Kroc Show on WBAP.
Hey, Chris, it's so good to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you. So, everything was going Kamala Harris' way, says the Politico today. Then came the market sell-off. And I put, what happened? What happened? What happened? You tell me.
Well, we got a lousy jobs report on Friday, which really showed the economy slowing down considerably. And, the first half of this year was a good year for the economy, but it just seems as though the economy's hit a bit of a wall. And look, I'm not predicting a recession. I think we can sidestep a recession, but there's no question the economy is fragile right now. Let's put it like that, in a precarious position. And so we're going to need to, I think, a regime change in Washington, frankly, to avoid, a financial crisis in this country. I mean, my God, we are borrowing $2 trillion a year. We've been doing that now for 3 or 4 since COVID hit, and COVID's been over for 3 years. We've got the illegal immigration problem that you were just reporting on. You've got the issue of out of control crime. You've got a situation where people are having a hard time paying their bills. I mean, my goodness, a lot of people are saying they don't even have enough money to go to McDonald's anymore.
Right.
Like McDonald's has become a luxury. So, but let me just say one last thing. Yeah, I want to make sure that your listeners understand very clearly that the reason that we're in this crisis right now, that we saw the runaway prices, was, of course, because we have had the most financially irresponsible president in American history, in Joe Biden and his sidekick, Kamala Harris.
About that. They spent $1.2 trillion on a bipartisan infrastructure law. They spent $1.9 trillion on the American Rescue Plan Act. They spent $2.2 trillion on the Build Back Better Act. Right. She said, by the way, that Build Back Better would, quote, lower costs for Americans, designed to make it less expensive for working people to live. Build Back Better is not going to cost anything. We're going to pay for it, she says. When we can get our Build Back Better passed, the American people will see costs actually reduced around some of the most essential services they need to take care of their basic responsibilities. Did that happen?
Of course not. I mean, everyone knows that. Everyone who goes to the grocery store, everyone who goes to the gas pump, everyone who has to pay a utility bill or any of these other bills that are so expensive. I can't believe what things cost these days. I don't know about you, but I'm just shocked that, my wife pays the bills in our household. And so she started to show me recently. She goes, Steve, you have no idea how much things cost.
You just making policy. You just make policy.
Yeah, like $250 for our heating bill this month and that kind of thing. And I think everyone has experienced what I'm talking about.
Yes.
The costs are just completely out of control. And then Kamala says, inflation's behind us. Illegal immigration is behind us. Come on. I don't believe that.
What about speaking of illegals, supposedly around half of all the jobs, quote unquote, created under Biden and Kamala are to illegals, and supposedly the majority of them are part-time jobs. What is the truth about that?
Well, the bigger issue, you're right about some of those numbers, but the even bigger tragedy, I think, is that so many of the jobs are actually government jobs. Now, those don't really count because the government jobs are. The only way you could have a government job is to take away a job from the private sector, and so we really have a president who is hooked on government and thinks that government is the solution to all our problems. And boy, I wish that were the case. But of course, we should be downsizing our government right now with these massive deficits, and yet we're doing exactly the opposite now. We are adding, why are we borrowing $2 trillion this year? If you really wanted to have a solution to this problem, economic problem, I would call the Republicans and Democrats in Congress back for a special session. They're on their summer recess now. Say, come on back and come up with $1 trillion or $2 trillion of 10 years of savings. They could do that in a snap. I mean, there's so much waste in Washington, Chris. You know it. Everybody listening to the show knows it. And get rid of all the wasteful programs. Let's have work for welfare programs. Let's get rid of the Department of Education, which doesn't add any value. Let's get rid of the duplication, the redundancy, the inefficient programs, the $300 billion for green energy programs that have been a complete failure. We've got to do what a household or a business would do. Cut your expenses.
Steve Moore, he's on the committee, or is the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, a member of that whole organization, great organization, former Trump administration economist, and hopefully Trump wins, and if he does, hopefully you're back with him if you're interested in after the election. We have this too, the Somme rule. I wanted to ask you about one more thing. The Somme rule, which I'm sure you can cite it backwards in Hebrew or whatever languages you speak, you're so familiar with it, whether you agree with it or not is not the point. The question is supposedly the Somme rule has been kicked in, which has supposedly been right in every recession since 1970. What is it in a quick nutshell, and why do you think maybe it doesn't apply here, or it does, but it's wrong?
Well, I never buy any of these rules.
Okay.
They were saying an inverted yield curve back in 2022 was going to cause a recession. We didn't have a recession. I think most of economics is just common sense, in my opinion.
Okay.
It is looking at, why are we facing tough times right now? Well, because we're spending and borrowing too much money. We're regulating our businesses. We're taxing so many businesses out of competitive situation. The Biden thinks that the solution to all these problems is price controls. I mean, it's right back to the 1970s when Jimmy Carter was president. It's absurd. We have to have a system where we have control of our money. Every penny of this money that's been borrowed, you mentioned the $5 or so trillion Biden spent. Every penny of that has been paid for by printing money.
What does that do? What are these policies doing to the average American? I mean, you've said some of it already, but
They are making us all poor. It means the dollars it's like robbing you of the value of your dollar. I mean, my gosh, I took my sons the other day to McDonald's. It used to be like, $12 to get, 3 Big Mac meals. Now it's like $25, $30. I can't believe how expensive.
And that's directly.
You've got a family of 4. How can you even afford it?
That's right. And it's directly related to printing all this money so that you can buy more things, spend more things. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
All right.
Look, inflation, if you print money, it just means the money isn't worth, eventually it's not even worth the paper it's printed on.
I want to talk to you about what then needs to be done to get this to turn around. Well,
we got to get rid of this guy and this woman that are in the White House today. I mean, that's step one.
We see here that Harris blames Trump for the latest dreadful jobs report. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Almost exactly 4 years. 4 years later, she's been in charge for 4 years, and it's Trump's fault. The economy.
Yeah, it's called blame your predecessor, but when your predecessor hasn't been in office for 3.5 years, that's a little bit of a stretch. And incidentally, the inflation rate when Trump left office was 1.5%. We didn't have any inflation when Trump was president.
So, and Joe and her are like, well, wait, Kamala, cackling Kamala, literally says, I mean, they brag about we got inflation now. You put it up to 9.1 after being in office for a year and a half. You brought it up.
Yep.
And
it was the inflation rate from 1.5% from when Trump left office to 18 months later is 9.1%. And remember, first they blamed it on Putin, then they blamed it on the supply chain problems. Now they're blaming it on. Then they blamed it on gas station owners. Then they blamed it on greedy corporations. It's always somebody. It's never their own fault.
crazy. All right, I want to ask you a few more questions. I want to talk about what Kamala's policies would do to our economy and our unemployment and jobs in the next 4 years, should she win, God forbid, and what's different about Trump's policies and what they would do for inflation, wages, home affordability, grocery prices, gas prices, home energy prices, and we'll talk about your election prediction, too. Can you stand by?
Yep.
Stephen Moore, a former Trump economic advisor to the Trump presidency, and also an economist and on his own right, in a committee to unleash prosperity, and among many other great hats that he wears as an advocate and a warrior for protecting our economy and our jobs and our country and our way of life. Coming up next on the Chris Kroc Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.
Yeah, I was just thinking about all the messages they've tried out this cycle. They started with Bidenomics. That didn't work. With her threat to democracy, we don't hear that anymore after they installed a nominee without casting a single vote for her. So now they're onto this freedom thing. But you hit it. At the end of the day, most people are going to vote based on their own views about how the economy is affecting them personally. The conditions in the country hasn't changed. They changed out their nominee, but they haven't changed out the inflation. They haven't changed out the economic anxiety that most working families are facing. And that's something she's still going to have to deal with, because she's not an independent actor. She didn't land here, 6 weeks ago on a spaceship and said, hey, I'll take over. She's been sitting right next to Joe Biden for the last 4 years. And all of what came with that was a mid-30s approval rating and a country that most people think is wildly off on the wrong tracks.
Well, here we go. Former President Trump, economic advisor, top economic advisor for Trump's 2016 campaign, author, senior visiting fellow in economics at the Heritage Foundation. So many different amazing things he does. Currently an economist at FreedomWorks, senior fellow of the Heritage Foundation, as I said, and just a freedom-loving, truthful guy. Also the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Stephen, thank you very much for giving us one more segment of your time tonight. Very much appreciated and cherished. Appreciate that, sir.
Happy to be with you.
Well, and welcome back to another segment on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Ding! Make it a preset. Okay, what would Kamala's policies do to our economy and our unemployment and our jobs?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to point to a single thing that she has proposed that would be good for the economy. I mean, I can't think of anything.
That's a good point. There's zero policies on her website. None. There's no policies to be found on her website.
Well, and what we do know that she's in favor of now, she's become Kamala the chameleon. She keeps changing her positions every few days, exactly. So it's hard to pin her down. But we do know the statements that she's done on the record, for the last 5 or 6 years, and that includes the fact that she was for a single-payer healthcare system, so everybody would be forced. Remember when Obama said, "If you like your healthcare, you get to keep it."
Right.
That's not Kamala's plan. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. You're going in the government system. Medicare for all. She wants to get rid of fracking. I don't even know if she knows what fracking is, but 75% of our oil and gas comes from horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing. But she wants to eliminate because it's climate change fanatic. She wants to get rid of the filibuster. She wants to. She's talked about packing the Supreme Court, so that the liberals can have their own way and create their own laws. She is someone who cast the tie-breaking vote for those four multi-trillion-dollar spending bills you were talking about. And she has a history of being weak on crime. She was the border czar, and, she completely failed at that. She was the attorney general in California. That's the chief law enforcement officer. While she was attorney general, crime went through the roof in California. Somebody show me anything she's done right.
Right. Good point. Hey, my buddy Eric Erickson, I'm sure you know him. He says if MAGA can't beat Ferraro Mondale of 2024, it needs to hang it up. I mean, this should be, and that's his thoughts, but what do you think? I mean, who's winning right now, and who do you think as of right now? I know you're not a Svengali here, but who do you think is going to win the election and why, and who's winning right now?
Well, first of all, the last 2 or 3 weeks have been just the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I mean, my goodness, as you just said in that clip you were just playing, 3 weeks ago, Kamala Harris was the least popular vice president in American history because of the failure of everything she touches. And I've never seen anything like this. The media is treating her like she's Mother Teresa. I mean,
yes,
it's the most unbelievable thing. And she hasn't even really been out in public. She hasn't really she's given some speeches, but they're all scripted.
Yes.
She's flip-flopped on every position. And so, there's this kind of honeymoon love affair that's going on right now. But I do think that, look, that's going to rub off. People are going to see the real Kamala Harris. She is a old school, San Francisco liberal Democrat. Now, you're there in Texas. If that's what people want, go ahead and vote for her. If you
right.
want the policies that have destroyed California for the whole country, then you should vote for her.
There are many here from California, as you know, fleeing as refugees.
Yeah, but they fled to get away from those policies.
Right, that's right. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Steve, what's the difference about Trump's policies and what they would do for inflation, wages, home affordability, interest rates, grocery prices, gas prices, home energy prices?
So, you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to imagine what it would be like if Trump were president, because he was president.
Right.
And for 4 years, we had a booming economy. I remember, in early January 2020, waking up and thinking, oh, my God, this is the best economy of my lifetime. And I remember I had this kind of harrowing nightmare that something was going to happen. I never imagined it was going to be a pandemic. But if it had not been for the virus, right, Trump would have won a 40-state re-election landslide like Reagan won in the 80s. And so, we know this guy's a businessman. We know how he knows how to create jobs. He knows how to meet a payroll. He knows how to make America an efficient country. And he, I don't always agree with Donald Trump. And, that's one thing I respect about him. He and I can argue about the issues and stuff. But even when I've disagreed with him, I've always believed that in his heart, he puts America first. I don't think the liberals do. I think they feel guilty about America. They don't. It's almost like they don't want us to succeed.
Well, Kamala's pastor did say 6 days after 9/11, in front of a man whose partner died on the flight over Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and he said, "America, what did you do?" Pelosi wrote a scathing editorial the next day attacking him, and all these liberals walked out and stuff. Is crazy. So yeah. All right. Well, listen, Steve Moore, I really, really, really appreciate you. I look forward to your next time on the Chris Kroc Show on WBAP, and thanks, man. God bless you, and we hope to talk to you soon again, brother.
Have a great night.
You too, sir. Thank you. All right, Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Check him out. Stephen Moore, or Steve Moore for short, like many of us called him, Fox News contributor at all. Okay, coming up next on the Chris Kroc Show, the illegal, actually, before we get to the illegal terrorist invasion, which will be coming up probably around 10-ish, precipitous war. The precipice of war, excuse me. We are on the precipice of war. We're about to fall into it, step into it, because of the way Kamala Biden have led us here. How Israel needs us to defend itself against an impending attack. It needs us, or otherwise it faces an existential threat. And I actually believe that the Jewish 50% of Jews now favor Trump and will vote for Trump over Kamala. Trump now leads in New York Jews by 1%. Stunning that came out today. I believe it's because Kamala and her positions are a threat to the existence of Jews in this world. I strongly believe that, because she will let Iran do what it wishes and Hamas do what it wishes. She is not a friend of the Jew. She is not a friend of Israel, and it's portrayed by her actions. That's next to the Chris Kroc Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, and how we're about to have a war here, soon, unfortunately. Next on the Chris Kroc Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. War in the Middle East is imminent. The Iranians have said, and Israel has said it publicly, and we know it publicly, we've said it publicly, that in fact Iran is going to hit Israel within right now to another 24 hours. They could delay it by a little bit or whatever, but they're going to do an attack. This attack's going to be bigger and better. I don't support it. I'm not saying it's better, but it's going to be bigger and better of an offensive front against Israel than they did in April, where they launched 300 missiles and one-way drones. Can you imagine that? 300 missiles and one-way drones shot in your country, and your country is like 9 million people, or around 9 million people, And it's I forget what the size. Would you look up the size of Gaza compared to one of our states? I think it's tiny. Not Gaza, Israel. I think it's tiny. I don't know for sure, but I'm 99.9% sure it's like 55 miles north and south and 18 miles wide or something. Or maybe that's Gaza. It ain't much different. Yeah, just let us know which state it's like, less than this state or that state, or about the size of physical size, okay? Anyway, the point is that's a mega attack, and now it's going to be much worse. The report today from the Wall Street Journal, why Israel needs more than an Iron Dome to thwart an attack. The Iron Dome is a series of missiles 31 times smaller than Texas. Do we have another state? Because it's hard to really compute that. That gives us enough, but I want to get like a small state or something. I don't know. Is it like half the size of Rhode Island or something? I don't know. Anyway. So Iran has drones, ballistic missiles that Iron Dome is not designed to stop. The Iron Dome, as I was mentioning, is a series of missiles, missile, and even guns that are incredible. If you've seen it, you can Google it. Iron Dome working while it's firing, and there's these massive R2D2 things, and they go. Zzz. Holy crap. Maine is almost 4 times, right? Almost 4 times larger than Israel. Maine is almost 4 times larger. That gives you an example. So they received 300 rockets and drones one-ways in April. This is going to be much greater. And this is reportedly going to be a multi-front attack. It's not just going to be from Iran. This time it's going to be from Iran. It's going to be from Hezbollah to the north, out of Lebanon, possibly out of Syria from a third front, and definitely out of Yemen with the Houthis from the southern front. This is going to be incredible. And we had to step in to defend Israel to make sure they didn't get hit. We were literally firing anti-missiles, air-to-air missiles from our warplanes, fighter jets, and sea-to-air missiles from our carriers to stop, and our destroyers to stop the terrorists from hitting them. But now it's going to be possibly from as many as 4 fronts: south, north, and northeast, and due east. Isn't that crazy? Can you imagine? And you're the size of one-fourth the size of Maine. And so Iran has drones and ballistic missiles. Iron Dome is not designed to stop, the journal says. Hezbollah has an arsenal with tens of thousands of mortars, rockets, and precision-guided missiles that could threaten to overwhelm the country's defenses. They cannot sustain without us. And I'm going to tell you something. We must defend them as if they are us. You can disagree, but we must. We must. In response, Israel and the United States have stitched together for this upcoming attack, a new and bigger air defense system that draws upon the capabilities of Israeli, American, and other air forces, radar systems in neighboring countries. Even Arab states are going to be helping us. Once sworn enemies, Trump brought them together through the Abraham Accords, which is why now more Jews support Trump in a brand new poll than Kamala. In New York Jews, more than now support Trump, which I think is incredible and beautiful. They're going to have to do, all these people come together in states to shoot down Iranian projectiles. And I listened to a former Israeli prime minister. I can't remember which one it is, but I think he was in right before Netanyahu was in, so recent. And he was interviewed on Fox News today. It was amazing. It was beautiful. He said, we need to, and most likely they will, if this continues to escalate, they're going to kill the leaders of Iran. And he says the people of Iran are beautiful people. I know that to be true, too. I've met them here in America. They're citizens. The Iranians, whether they be Muslims or Christian or non-religious folks, they do not disdain, hate, or dislike the Americans in freedom. They want their freedom. Let's go to Gregory, who's called in. The number is 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. I call this a threat to their existence. Kamala being the president next, because I'll read you some stuff. She excoriates Israel. She does not support Israel. And Tim Walz, the Democrat governor of New York, of Minnesota, also does not support Israel at all compared to the Palestinians and the terrorists. How confident are you that President Kamala would defend Israel fully against any attacks? How important is that to you? And how do you think the usually reliable Jewish Democrat vote may change as a result of this new Democrat ticket, which is, in my opinion, a threat to their existence and a right versus wrong choice? That's literally what this all is as of right now. That's it. Gregory in Southlake, you have called in on WBAP. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Let's not forget that the Israelis have somewhere estimated between 90 and 400 nukes.
Yes.
And I don't believe they have a no nuclear first strike policy. So I think the Tehran government better consider this, because they could just vaporize Tehran.
You know what, though? I wonder what the cost would be if they were to do that without it being like they have evidence that they're about to shoot a nuclear weapon. I think they would much rather. My understanding is they have the missiles, the intelligence, and the technology to take out every single one of their nuclear facilities where they're enriching uranium, and they will have no problem doing that.
Well, I think the problem, the issue is not so much disabling their nuclear, the Iranians' nuclear plant. It's just eliminating the Iranian government. I mean, if they push this and it turns into an existential threat for Israel, I think the Israelis would go nuclear, and they'd be completely justified in doing it. But there's another issue here.
By the way, real quickly, I don't think they're going to do that, because then they lose the will of probably the whole Arab world and probably half of the free world, unless they had to do that. They wouldn't lose the Wahhabi guys who hate the Shia in Iran. So I mean, it's again pushed to an existential threat. I think they pull the plug on that one. The Prime Minister I was mentioning. The Prime Minister I was mentioning a little while ago. It's Naftali Bennett, and he was on Fox News where with the Martha McCallum show. It had Brett Baer filling. It was amazing. He is basically saying openly, he was the former Prime Minister before Netanyahu, and he's basically saying that they will take out the entire leadership, and that the Iranian people are beautiful and they won't be touching them, but they'll be taking them all out if that's necessary.
Well, that would be a good move.
Oh, by the way, and offensive.
There's another issue.
Yeah.
Chris, that we really need to look at that you're not talking about. Okay, and that's what happened in the stock markets, the global stock markets over the weekend. Okay,
I have talked about it yesterday and today.
Well, no, I know you talked
regarding our economy.
I know you talked about it. I couldn't get on the air. Okay, but just listen for a minute. Okay,
real quickly.
We're on the verge of collapse. Okay, I'm talking about at best case 30%, worst case 75% decline in the S&P 500. Okay,
it rallied back today, which is normal apparently. Even after the crash of what was it, 34 or 29 was it?
It's a dead cat bounce today.
Maybe you're right.
It's a dead cat bounce. Okay, you're looking at probably September, October, there's going to be another problem. You've got some banks that are shaky. The Bank of Japan just increased interest rates for the first time in decades.
Yeah, their Nikkei dropped 12% Monday, yesterday, yeah.
Well, what unwound there was the Japanese carry trade, and what I think you saw with the Friday collapse and the Monday collapse was a lot of margin calls on guys that have been investing in these high-tech stocks with zero interest money they borrowed from Japan, okay? And they were doing that on leverage, okay?
How does this apply to right now and where we're headed with Kamala if she wins versus Trump?
Oh, Kamala. If Kamala wins, we're all finished. We're all finished. You just might as well eat cyanide or something.
Now, they always say that about, and I'm literally playing the other side here, but let me just put this out there to you. They always say that about and I'm saying, always say that about other ones, like the former Hussein Obama administration. It was very bad, but nothing like Biden. That was way worse. So, what is different from right now? And then we got to go in 30 seconds. What's different from right now and this time than under Obama or under Biden? What's different? How, the end of the world's going to happen, but how or why? Versus how's it going to happen when it didn't before?
Well, the problem, a big part of the problem is just the tremendous U.S. debt. I mean, you could talk about potentially the U.S. defaulting. You could talk about contagion. If the Bank of Japan collapses, you're talking about contagion across the world. You're going to have bank collapses here in the States.
Yeah.
And if this happens before the election, this is going to be great.
Yeah. Yes, it's looking like the economy is headed in the wrong direction, regardless of whether a recession hits or not, and that will bode well for Trump and horribly for Kamala, who has told us 5 times. I've got the audio right here. I'll play it for folks when we come back. That Bidenomics is working. Bidenomics is working. She said it 5 times in the past year. I got to go, Gregory. Thanks for your call.
Bidenomics is working if you want to end the U.S. economy.
That's exactly right. Appreciate your call. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. What was Kamala's gift? What is Kamala's gift to Hamas right now? And much more on a couple of different things here. We have the world is not ready to confront a new international threat from Foreign Affairs. I'll share some details on that coming up next. Plus, as promised, you're going to hear that audio that I promised to play for you about Kamala and Bidenomics is working. Next on the Chris Crock Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3, asking you, as we are now on the precipice of war, a war that Israel cannot defend itself fully against. We must be in there. We are integrated with our defense systems now. Right now, ready for the attack, coming from 4 different points possibly at Israel, of us and Arab nations and their air forces all working together to form a mesh of defense over Israel, because it is a free democracy and it brings prosperity and freedom and wealth into the Middle East like none other before.
I feel like no matter who anybody votes for, it's never going to be exactly what you want. I don't agree with everything my wife says.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And you still love her, and you love the good, and she's working on the bad. Yeah. So are you.
Oh, yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm clear. I want my interest rates to be down. And I know, that doesn't have anything to do. And then Israel needs to be protected more than ever now.
That is super liberal Jewish actor, comedian Michael Rappaport. He is now not going to vote for Kamala, and he is now openly considering voting for the man he hates and has attacked like he's some kind of a terrorist Satan worshiper, Donald J. Trump. He is now openly saying he is considering voting for Trump, but he will not vote for Kamala. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. CNN Chiron, you know what the Chiron is? That's the graphic at the bottom, right? The label, or whatever, it says messages. The CNN Chiron says sources, Harris team sees VP pick as key to blue walls. More like blue balls, I just tweeted. Because that's what's going to happen to them. They're going to get kicked in the you-know-what. Squat in the you-know-whats, as Cartman used to say. Now, let me play this one for you about I want to set up with the Israel thing. I'll play I'll play it real fast. Here's the Bidenomics is working ad. So 5 times she said this in the past year. Bidenomics is working.
Bidenomics is working.
Meanwhile, most renters feel like they will never be able to own a home.
The typical starter home is now worth more than $1 million. For many buyers, that means achieving the American dream of owning a home is increasingly difficult, if not impossible.
And Bidenomics is working.
Listen to this stat. Since 2020, food prices have increased 26%, and we are all feeling it when we go grocery shopping.
Bidenomics. It's working. It's a term we're very proud of, I must tell you.
Gas prices are on the climb across the U.S.
Prices are nowhere near the levels they were at in 2020.
And Bidenomics is working.
So if you get 3 consecutive monthly readings on job gains that are 125,000, I'm beginning to smell a recession.
Bidenomics is working.
It's working.
Isn't that great? Kamala's laughing. She's super well off, and we are not. And she's going to double more down and triple more down. Here is a Trump ad, since we're on the economy push. Here's a Trump ad where they take Ronald Reagan and they just say, basically, this is who we are. This is what you need to think about. The same thing Ronald Reagan said when he was running.
Please welcome President Ronald Reagan, who has a few questions for you.
All of you will go to the polls, who stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? If you don't think that this course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4, then I could suggest another choice that you have.
President Trump. He'll make America great again.
Pretty good, huh? I mean, Reagan's right, and that's the message. They're getting it. I do fundamentally think that when you define her and now her VP pick, Tim Walz, that it's going to be a clear, simple choice. And I think that this decision pushes people over the edge, I think, to say this administration is not going to be moderate in any way, shape, or form. It's just on its face true. Here's a great little article, or excuse me, an editorial from Lindsey Graham, who half time I think is wrong, but half time I think he's right, and he's definitely right on this. 3 ways to confront Iran, he wrote today in the Wall Street Journal. When President Trump left office, Iran was exporting 300,000 barrels of oil a day. By October 2023, that figure was 1.4 billion barrels of oil a day. If a nation buys oil or gas from Iran, the U.S. could levy a tariff on all imports that enter that country. Any Hezbollah attack on Israel would be considered an Iranian attack on Israel. And this was the position of President John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Iranian oil refineries should also be on the list if Hezbollah or other Iranian proxies continues to attack Israel. Iran's nuclear program, if Iran crosses the lines on definitive red lines, the U.S. would be authorized to use military force against it. And here's the clincher. On this one quote alone is worth the whole article, a whole column today in the Journal. Until the Iranians understand what they cannot do, okay, until the Iranians understand what they can't do, they will continue to sow chaos. They do not know what they cannot do, so they continue to push, and do bad stuff. Kamala's gift to Hamas is real simple. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, she wrote. Basically, here's what the Wall Street Journal editorial wrote. Her childish boycott of Netanyahu's address to Congress. Why was it necessary to win the Palestinian narrative that places the blame on the war for Israel? She also lied and said that she's hearing stories about people in Gaza eating animal feed, grass. She's apparently unaware the food prices are significantly lower than in Israel, in Gaza. And in any other war in the past century, has any one side regularly supplied food to the enemy's civilians? It's still being attacked by the White House. There you go. That's from an editorialist from Israel's Channel 12.